And we are live, so perfect. Okay, thank you everybody for joining us this evening with our guest Jennifer, talking about how to prepare campers to get ready for camp and how to help set them up for success. We're going to start really quickly with some introductions before we hand it over to her. As well as we're going through, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and there'll be a time for some Q&A at the end as well. But first off, some quick introductions. My name is Mallory. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of camps, meaning that I oversee our camp program, but I also oversee some of our year-round programs, both virtual and in person.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. I use they, them pronouns. I am the administrator for Rainbow Camp and also the program coordinator for all of our year-round online programs.
And I'm Jennifer, and I'm going to switch over to a presentation so I can tell you a little bit more about myself. All right, we'll see you guys on the other side. All right, so as I said, I am Jennifer Boudrye, and we're here to talk about parenting before, during, and after camp. So I am a parent coach, and my company is Parent with Care, which is compassion, awareness, respect, and empathy. But who am I really? Well, I am a mom of 3 adult children. It terrifies me to realize that they are 32, 31, and 27. My 27-year-old is bisexual, and I'm also the bonus mom to a 34-year-old trans man who is married to a cisgender woman, and they have the most amazingly adorable 1-year-old kiddo. I'm not at all biased. I've been an educator for more than 30 years. I was a school librarian, a school administrator, and a teacher. I am a certified parent coach from the Jai Institute for Parenting. I am a parent support group facilitator for an organization called the Ryan Bartell Foundation, that works to end teen suicide. I'm also the education director for Equality Loudoun, which is an LGBTQ advocacy group in Loudoun County, Virginia, which is where I am. And my goal in doing this work is to help parents to truly move from a place of fear and confusion and sadness and whatever they may be feeling and become enthusiastic allies for their queer kiddos, because I believe that is truly the only way we are going to make the world safe for the entire LGBTQ plus community. So we're going to go over some things that you can do to prepare and practice before your kiddo goes to camp. Some things you can implement during camp, and after camp, how you can reflect and reinforce some of the camp loveliness. So I want to start with you having to think about why camp for your kiddo. I know when my mom started sending me to camp when I was very young, it was because she was a single mom and she needed childcare. So there was no option. I was going away and going to camp. Luckily, I was able to find she was able to find a camp that was focused around horses, which was my love in the moment. So there are a lot of different reasons. And if we were live all together, I would be able to have the conversation with you. But this picture is some of the things that parents will mention when we talk about why their kiddo is going to camp. They want them to make friends, have new adventures, become more independent, become resilient, have some freedom, and joy, right? We want camp to be amazing. And I think everything that I have heard about Camp Rainbow, I'm pretty sure they're going to find all of those things and more. One of the things I want to suggest is that prior to camp, you and your kiddo have had a conversation about why camp. Are they in alignment with the same reasons that you want to go to camp? As I said, my mom found a camp that met things that I loved and enjoyed, and it worked for her as well. It's not necessarily a wonderful thing if the kid does not want to go to the camp that you're sending them to. You need to work through what is going on and what their hesitations are. So just making sure you've had that conversation is a really good foundation. All right. So some additional things that are really good to do before you send your kiddo off to camp is make sure that they have some solid life skills. I used to work at a boarding high school, and it was amazing to me the number of kids who showed up who had 0 life skills. So some things you can do that are specifically targeted around camp is packing and laundry. I think my kids were 10 when I started teaching them how to do their own laundry. And the wonderful thing was that once they figured it out, I didn't have to do it anymore. So I know that the camp will send or provide you guys with a list of what to pack, but I would suggest having your child pack themselves first, and then you double check it. I was shared a story with Mallory at the previous session that we had a friend or parent who had let their kiddo pack for camp, and they packed everything except underwear. And so apparently they wanted to go commando the whole time. Another thing to have conversations and involve your kiddo with our meal prep and eating healthy. Sometimes when you get to camp, there are unfamiliar foods. They may want to spend the entire camp time eating only peanut butter. Not necessarily the best healthy thing for them. Again, this is a life skill. I think my kids were 6 or 7 when I taught them like what goes into a good healthy lunch. And from that point forward, again, they were able to do it for themselves. Made my life so much easier. Sleep routines, sleep hygiene is very, very important. Clearly at the beginning of camp, there's excitement, there's anxiety sometimes. So sleep routines might get a little askew. So having a solid sleep schedule and allowing kiddos to be able to manage their own sleep routines is a very, very valid and valuable skill. If your kiddo gets hurt or gets sick, do they know what to do? Do they know if they have a cut, how to apply, how to clean it well and how to apply pressure? Do they know how to describe what it is they're feeling and experiencing if they have an illness? Clearly, there are adults that are there that are going to be helping them, but if they're able to do some basic first aid and take care of themselves until they can get an adult, it's a very helpful thing. All right, emotions. We're going to talk a little bit in a couple of slides around some self-regulation strategies. But before your kiddo goes to camp, talk about how they respond to new challenges and new situations. Even if they've been to camp before, there will be new kids. There will be new activities. So are they kiddos that get very, very frustrated and or shut down when there are new situations? Talk through some ways that they can handle any emotions or things that come up with new situations. With friendships and conflict, again, if this is their first time at camp, they're going to be meeting all new people. If it's a return, there will still be new people. Do they have a set of questions that they can use as conversation starters? Are they clear on things that they're wanting and willing to share with others so that they can start to build connections? How do they handle it if they're in a group of friends and all of a sudden they start to feel left out? Strategizing those things ahead of time is going to be really, really helpful when they're at camp. So anticipating their feelings, making sure that they are aware of how to respond when they're feeling certain ways. And then again, we're going to talk about some self-regulation strategies. Communication, truly, truly valuable to set some things ahead of time. Go over your camp rules with your kiddo. Don't just read them yourself and assume that your kid knows everything that they're going to need to do. Some of the rules may be similar or very different than your family rules or values. So you need to ensure that your kiddo knows the rules and the reason behind them and the consequences if they make the choice to not follow the rules. You don't want any surprises. It is never, ever, ever too early or too infrequent to talk about consent. And I don't just mean consent around sexual activity. I mean consent around emotional space and yours, theirs, others, making sure that your kiddo knows how to extend consent as well as to ask for consent. Communication expectations. If your kiddo is expecting you to be writing every single day and you're like, see you when you get back, that could end up with some conflict and some hurt feelings. So make sure that you're clear with each other on the level of communication. If you expect to hear from your kiddo and they're just having a great time and don't bother to write back when you write to them, you may be upset or worried. Okay, so making sure that that's clear ahead of time, really super valuable. And be honest with camp. right? There are always things that are impacting kids, and your kiddo is going to show up at camp. And if the camp doesn't know about things that might be going on, they're not going to be in a position to provide the level of support that they might need. So I'll give an example from my life. It's not camp related, but my son went to an arts boarding school. And on the way to taking him to school, essentially my marriage fell apart. And we knew this was kind of happening ahead of time. So I had reached out to school to let them know what was going on. So the very first day of school, we got him registered and he was able to meet with a counselor, and we made sure that that support was there for him. And if I hadn't shared that, it would have been really, really problematic, and he would not have had as successful a time as he did. And we still refer to his school as the Snow Globe of Happiness because it was up there in Upper Michigan. So being honest with whatever is going on, and also not just family situations, but if your kiddo has a new diagnosis or a new medication or something else that they've learned that is going to impact their camp experience, please be sure to make sure that the camp is aware, right? Again, it's just so that they can provide the level of support for each camper that is there. All right, now we're going to dive into some emotions and self-regulation skills. Before camp is a great time to develop a consistent check-in system, right? Kiddos, especially adolescents, sometimes you feel like you're, bothering them or in their face, or they're not in the habit of sharing what it is that's going on. So if you have just a consistent system that you utilize, it becomes second nature to everyone. So a couple that we've used that I've, other clients have found really successful. One is called thorn, bud, or rose. So a thorn is something awful that happened that day, something that is really unpleasant. A bud, it might be something that might be problematic in the moment, but is going to turn out to be just fine. And a rose is something beautiful that happened, something they've experienced that was bringing them joy. Another way you can do it is assign a number, right? So let's say 5 is the best day ever. 1 is I'm not getting out of bed. Check in throughout the day. What's your number? How are you doing? Right? It's just a very quick way. They don't even have to use words. They can just use their hand and show you the number. Another way, and one that's very common, is worst and best, right? Sometimes people usually say best and worst. I like to flip it. Start with the bad, the negative. What was the worst thing that happened today? What was the best thing, right? And with that, modeling, labeling feelings. All right. So Dr. Brene Brown did an extensive study, and realized that most people are able to identify about 3 feelings: mad, happy, sad. She then did more research and wrote a book. There are more than 81 feeling words, right? It's a huge vocabulary. It's really important that we as adults model for our kids labeling our feelings, right? It gives them the permission to understand and experience what they're feeling and be able to communicate it more effectively. So the more often that you can label your feelings, what's going on with you in the moment, beyond mad, happy, sad, the better their vocabulary is going to be, and the better you'll be able to understand what's going on. And when feelings do come up, and they always do, it's really important just to validate their feelings. Everyone's feelings are valid. You may not agree with what's going on or how they're responding, but their feelings are still valid. So if your kiddo is able to share that they're very frustrated or angry or upset about something, I hear what you're feeling. Name the feeling. Is that right? Can you tell me more about that? Could you share with me? Help me understand, right? Starting the conversation with validating their feelings, it's going to lead to a lot more open communication. And this is one that I have been accused of being very bad at as a parent. Ask permission to provide perspective or solutions. So it turns out that as a coach, one of the strengths that I have is providing perspective. Apparently, my kids were not as appreciative when they were struggling with issues or struggling with things, because I would give perspective. I would provide solutions. What they really wanted was for me just, again, to validate their feelings and to be there and empathize with them. So I am now in the habit, and I'm getting much better at asking permission. Are you looking for a solution, or do you just want me to hear you right now? Big difference in communication. So let's talk a little bit about dysregulation, right? We want regulation strategies because sometimes we become dysregulated. So you've all heard about the fight or flight response. It's the unconscious response when your body senses danger or you're experiencing something, whether it's a bear or your teacher or a parent getting ready to yell at you because you didn't do something you were supposed to do. It's that unconscious response, right? But there is more to our response system. The whole parasympathetic branch, so the polyvagal theory says that we have the ability to control and get ourselves out of dysregulation to become regulated. So we want to live in a place where the ventral vagal system is activated, and you can strengthen it. And I'll tell you how in a little bit. But that's a place where you're feeling peaceful and joy, right? If you are in a place where you're experiencing that fight or flight all the time, you're consistently dysregulated, you're at risk of landing into that freeze or faint, just shutting down, right? The dorsal vagal system is activated. So another way to look at it, because visuals I think are helpful for folks, is to think of it as a ladder. Okay, so you want to be living up here where you are feeling safe and social and you're completely engaged, you're at ease, things can happen and it's fine. You'll be able to, manage, and you see the big picture and the world that's in it. When you are activated, when something happens, the parasympathetic activation, you become mobilized, agitated, frantic, right? And that's where you can decide. We can either work to regulate or just ignore that and shut down, become numb, collapse, feel like you're buried, right, under a huge load. A lot of people, especially a lot of adolescents, have a tendency to get stuck down here. So we want to work with them, again, modeling for them when you're feeling overwhelmed, right? You're going to be able to do some things. I'm going to show you in a couple to get yourself back out of that. I'm going to make sure that they know that they have the power and the ability to regulate themselves. So here's again another visual that one or the other might be more helpful for you. This is a thermometer, right? And this is kind of flipped, whereas before I said 5 was fantastic and 1 was eh. Here we're starting 1 being calm and present, right? Just everything is fine. And then escalating up, the temperature is rising up to the white level 5 that they're blowing. They cannot handle any more. So what do you do when you are having a challenge, becoming regulated? Several things you can do. I talk a lot about finding the pause and seeking the sigh. So whenever there is a stimulus, something happens, there's a moment before the response, okay? Sometimes you may not know, or you may not be able to find it, so you have to practice it, right? Something happens. Kid crashes the car, drops a glass of milk, things break. That's the stimulus. There is a moment where you can take a pause, seek the sigh, and then respond, okay? Being able to lengthen that time takes practice. But the more you do it, the easier it gets. Another thing that is really helpful is breath training. I've listed 3 different types of breath work that are helpful in becoming more regulated. One is box breathing. I put here a count of 4, but some people find that to be a little much. So do a count of 3. Essentially, it's you breathing in for the count, holding for the count, breathing out for the count, and then holding for the same count, right? Just literally a box. Another is alternate nostril breathing, breathing in on one side, out the other, or just equal breathing, where you're breathing in for a count, say of 6, breathe out for a count of 6. All of those things are going to signal your body to come back into a place of regulation so that you can respond. A lot of people find the emotional freedom technique or the EFT tapping to be very, very helpful. But when somebody has become completely dysregulated and you need, sort of an emergency response, cold water is often all that it takes. Putting your hands under cold water, taking a cold shower, get your nervous system back on track so that you can continue on and find that place of peace again. Long term, and the way that you can build up that part of the polyvagal system that's going to be helpful in the long run Spending time in nature. Isn't it convenient? Kiddos are going to camp, right? So they're going to have that opportunity. They're going to be in nature. Very helpful for them. Engaging in positive relationships, laughter, napping, which I never get to do, but I love, easy repetitive exercise, practicing gratitude on the daily basis, and play. So many of those things, those kiddos are going to be able to experience at camp. So it's a great opportunity for them to develop the ability to regulate themselves a little more. All right, I'm going to talk now a little bit about social media addiction. My middle daughter, when she was an undergraduate, was a neuropsych major, and she was doing research around the impact of cell phone addiction on social relationships. And this was like 2009, 10, 11, somewhere in there. And there really wasn't a lot of research. There wasn't a lot of data. There wasn't a lot of literature about it because people weren't really seeing the impact. Smartphones were just starting to become common for everyone. So she did some research and did some studies, and shocker, showed and demonstrated that cell phone addiction has a negative impact on social relationships. And in February of this year, the American Psychological Association released a study that showed that reducing social media use, even by 50% for a few weeks, had a dramatic impact on the way that teens saw themselves and their body and their weight. And so I don't think anyone can say strongly enough how important it is to take cell phone and social media addiction seriously. And here's the big challenge for us as adults is that they're watching us all the time. So if we're telling our kiddos to put it away, put the device down, but we're still on there all the time, it's a really, really mixed message. Okay. It's not great for any of us, but it is definitely impacting teens on a more significant and severe way. So what are some things that you can do to control social media use and addiction? Set times. And it's either setting times that they can be on or be off. This past weekend, I got to be with all of my kiddos, which is a rarity because they live in different places. And we were, mostly device free. But you could tell every once in a while people are just starting to get that little itch. And so we would call a social media break, give everybody a few minutes, check in on the things that you need to check, and then devices would go away again so that we could enjoy each other's company. There are a variety of screen time apps that you can use to monitor usage and not just keeping them safe and where they're going, but the amount of time that is being spent in different places. Please make meals screen free if you're not already. I'm going to put that soapbox away for a sec, but just super important. There's plenty of time to have conversation. Pause before you scroll. And I see this all the time that we all doom scroll, right? You just get sucked in. And it's really important, not for you, but for your kiddos and for you to model for your kiddos, taking a minute and be like, wait, what am I doing? How am I feeling right now? Am I doom scrolling because I'm thirsty or I'm bored? I'm tired. Or am I just really super interested in what I'm looking at, right? So there's a variety of reasons why we all get sucked in, but just taking that moment to check in to see, is there another need that can be met, is a very, very helpful tool. Turning off your notifications, very simple thing to do. It stops that dopamine hit that gets us addicted. I will be sharing all of this information with you all after this, but I wanted to mention right here, the Center for Humane Technology. They did if you've seen the Social Dilemma documentary, they're the group that was involved in creating and producing that. They have a ton of great information. These are all people from the industry that realized that what they were creating was actually harmful. So they're working very hard to provide people resources and information to end the addiction. All right, so you've got your kiddo, you've been practicing all the things, and now they're off at camp. What are some things that you can implement to continue having positive parenting? Stay connected, okay? Follow the expectations you agreed upon. If you told your kiddo that you were going to write them every single day, write them every day, okay? If you told them that you were not going to panic if you didn't hear from them, don't panic if you don't hear from them. You can pre-write. I know Camp Rainbow uses a special system that, Caitlin may be able to share with us, or Mallory. But make sure that, you are prepared in the moment. If you know you're going to have a super busy time when they're gone, write the things ahead of time, right? You can schedule emails to go out over time. Don't share life-changing news while your kiddo's at camp. And this one comes from a very personal experience. As I mentioned earlier, my mom had me at camp because she needed childcare. She was a single mom. But one year, I got a postcard that said that she had moved. She had sold her house and bought a new house. And I went back to camp to a new house in a new neighborhood. And it was not the way to share with me that news. Did not go so well. And then unfortunately, I kind of did the same thing to my children, even though I swore that that was like one of the worst experiences of my life. As a parent, we repeat patterns. Now I'm a parent coach and I'm much more aware of those patterns. But my kiddos, we were moving in the same neighborhood, literally down the street. And we'd been renting a house and we bought a house, thought they'd be thrilled. They weren't moving to a new neighborhood. They weren't moving to new friends, but it was still a transition that they weren't prepared for. And, until they were there. So hold any life-changing news until you are face-to-face with your kiddo, but do share things that you're learning about yourself, right? Go take the time when they're away at camp to go to a movie that they wouldn't want to see, or a restaurant that they don't want to go to. Try and experiment different things and share that with them, right? It's great for them to know that you are enjoying your time as well. Check to see what the camp culture is around care packages. Some camps have, some people are traditionally getting tons and tons of things in a care package. Other camps, not so much. But so if your kiddo is getting, mismatched expectations, or they're not getting a care package and their bunkmate is getting a huge one, it could just lead to some frustration. So find out what the culture is and see what works for your kiddo. Accept what they share. Don't try to pry too much. Just accept whatever it is that they're willing to share while they're at camp. But listen between the lines. You know how your kiddo communicates. So if you hear something that is concerning or needs to be followed up, a couple of things, you can revisit those self-regulation strategies and help them with that. If you need to reach out to camp, absolutely do so. They're there for you and for your kiddo. Be enthusiastic about traditions. Some camp traditions are ridiculous, or maybe even annoying, but if your kiddo is enjoying them, be enthusiastic, right? Join in the fun with them. Find out what's bringing them joy every day. Find out what they're learning about themselves. Camp is an amazing time for them to grow and explore who they are and learn more about themselves. Find out what they're learning. And again, make time for you. This is time for you to have free from that kiddo. Even if you have other kiddos at home, then the family dynamics are going to be different and be changed. Enjoy the time. Okay. I really want to emphasize that you trust camp and trust your child. If there is something that you need to know, something that is concerning, they're going to let you know. Right? If your kiddo is having a tough time with friends, or if they need to get in touch with you for some reason, it's going to happen. It's going to be okay. All right. They've had an amazing time at camp and now they're coming home. The number one thing I want you to remember is that your kiddo may be a very different person after camp than the one that you sent to camp. And that's literally the point. This is their time to explore and experiment and find out more about themselves. So don't make any assumptions when they come back. You should definitely expect changes, right? They might have a different identity. They might have different gender expression. They might have new likes or dislikes, anything from food to activities, right? Find out who they are when they walk through the door. Oftentimes we get so excited to get re-engaged with our kiddos that we're in their face and we want to spend all the time and hug and do all of that. And they might just need space and time to process and to re-enter into their home life again. So find out what parts of camp can be continued at home. Again, some of those traditions, maybe some foods or things that routines that they had at camp that they really enjoyed. Can those be incorporated into home life? Help them stay connected to friends at camp and also with, the routines that they developed. So I know kids are obviously going to connect on social media, but if there's a way that you can help them visit in real life, if that's at all possible, connect with the other kids' parents, keeping those friendships sometimes can last a lifetime, and they can be wonderful. Celebrate all of the amazingness that camp caused and brought to your lives. Camp is a very special time. So remember that you and your child are on different paths on the same journey. And this is not just at camp time, but always. So you both need space and time to process and explore the paths away from each other. Okay. Let your child lead you. This is their story. You don't get to write it for them. The world can definitely be a scary place for queer people right now. There is no doubt. Camp is an amazing opportunity for them to be with a group of very supportive, loving, caring, accepting, safe people. And it is an absolute wonder for your kiddo and also for you to know that there are so many people that are supporting your child. Okay. You're helping your kiddo. It's an amazing opportunity. Excuse me. And again, I cannot underemphasize or overemphasize that your child's identity and expression and orientation may change over the time. It may change over the time of camp. They're learning and understanding more about themselves. So don't think or even concern yourself with whether it's a trend or if it's temporary. Just go with it. Because remember, the most important thing is to believe and respect the person that they tell you that they are every day. Just keep loving them. All right, so wrapping it up, what's next? Keep learning. You can follow me, subscribe to my newsletter, join me on a Facebook group. Happy to work with folks if you want to talk more about any of the situations that are coming up for you. I've my contact information there. And again, I'll be sending this to you all. Or Caitlin or Mallory will be. But I wanted to point out some of the resources that I am also sharing. Again, I've got the Center for Humane Technology there, and Common Sense Education that provides a great deal of information. They have some family resources, but I'm linked you to what they share for educators because I find it to be super useful. The couple of articles or pages from the American Psychological Association around social media. And then several resources around sex and relationships, because sometimes there's those awkward questions that you don't know how to answer. These resources are super, super helpful. Rue is actually an AI chat that is created by Planned Parenthood, and Scarlettine, Sex, etc., and Amaze all have amazing information and resources for you and your kiddos. And that is what I have to share with you all. So I'm going to stop sharing and come back, and I will see Mallory and Caitlin's faces again so I can stop staring at little boxes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. We've got a couple questions in the chat that I'll start off with. For anybody else who's watching live, feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them. To start with, we have a couple parents sharing some stories. So some of our parents share that their kids like to chew on ice. So you mentioned cold water as kind of a coping thing. We have a couple parents saying that, hey, the texture and the cold and that chewing on ice is one of the strategies that their kiddos use, which I think is a great one to add to that toolbox that may work for your kiddos. One of our parents also shared that this happened to them last year with communication. They didn't realize they could email their camper, and their camper thought they were ignoring them all week. They said that at the end of the week, their camper forgave them and it all had a happy ending, but they had, but their camper felt like they were being ignored during the week. And really the parent just didn't realize that they could be emailing their kid. So again, that communication kind of beforehand and setting expectations. And we have a couple of questions in here. The first one, does the camp use any of these coping strategies or check-in strategies with the kids? I know it must be hard with both of them, but what does that look like at camp?
Yeah, so some of those kinds of coping strategies and like a number of different kinds of like check-ins are, those are the kind of things that we teach to all of our staff and all of our camp counselors during our staff training. And so, a part of their training is, getting them into the routine of regularly checking in with the campers in their cabin and, catching the vibe, like, how's everyone feeling today? And making sure that they are in touch with how everyone is doing. Or I like the rose thorn bud that was brought up during the presentation as well. That's one that we'll use commonly as like a cabin reflection in the evenings. There's kind of reflective calm down activity that all of the cabins do before bed. But yeah, these are some of the kinds of strategies that we'll do with our campers, or that if they're having a rough time, then we'll work with them to kind of help them deploy these strategies to help them kind of recenter.
Yeah. And if you have a camper that really kind of need that or would really benefit from that, and you have kind of a check-in that works really well at home, send us that information in advance, and we can let the counselor know, hey, camper X sometimes struggles with this. When you notice them struggling, this is a really easy check-in that the parents have told us works.
Yep.
Yeah, we've had that kind of communication before. We've also had, we sometimes had campers say, we had a conversation, and this is going to be their like safe word. If they say this to you, it means that they just need a minute to step aside and calm down. So all of those kinds of strategies, absolutely let us know, and we will get the counselor in on those and get them all set.
Love that. And also sometimes hand signals, right? If a kiddo does not want to verbalize what's going on, if there's a hand signal that you as a family have found to be helpful, it can be your secret code.
Awesome. This next question I'm actually going to pass to Jennifer, but the question is kind of, my partner keeps telling our kid that he will come and pick him up if he ever wants to leave. I disagree, and this is sending mixed signals. How do we let our child know that we are there for them, but we can't immediately save them if they just decide they want to leave camp?
Yeah. So first of all, mixed signals are challenging, right? So you're setting your kiddo up for volleyball, right? Let's just keep trying passing it back and forth and see who's going to get me to the place where I want to be, right? So if you know that your kid is a couple of suggestions. If you know your kiddo is one who has a lot of anxiety, especially anticipatory anxiety, one of two ways to go, depending on your kiddo, right? So I'm going to talk about both, and it's up to the parents to decide how it works best for their kid. Some kids, it's really helpful to catastrophize. What is the worst case, right? Okay, the worst thing that could happen is a bear shows up. Okay, so that's the worst thing that can happen. What's the next worst thing that could happen? The bear's going to eat all the food. Okay, can the camp go and get more food? Okay, like just keep going and going to the point of absurdity. And if they get to a place where they're like, okay, literally the worst thing in life they could possibly imagine happens, they're going to still be okay. That's one way. The other way is to go to the super positive. What's the best thing that could happen? You're going to go to camp. What if you meet all new friends that are your friends for life? What if you discover a new activity that is going to be the thing that you do for the rest of your life and like makes you millions of dollars doing that thing, right? Like you can just, again, going one way or the other. I think it really helps kids to go through and sort of go through potential scenarios and anticipate, so that they know no matter what, they're going to be okay. They can handle it, right? But both parents need to be on the same page that these are the conditions under which we will absolutely come and get you. And whatever those are for your family, that is it. Anything short of that, so that you can make it through. And again, communicate with the camp. If you know your kiddo is one who is going to be really anxious about something, they're there to support.
Awesome. And that's one that happens at camp fairly often. We have quite a few campers coming to us with anxiety. And so one of the strategies we use at camp is we encourage campers to, write a letter or communicate some other way before we do that phone call. We also, if we have campers who are making a phone call to say, hey, I'm struggling at camp, we will often call the parents in advance and kind of say, hey, here's what your kid is experiencing. Let's talk over so we can agree with the parents in the camp what approach we want to take. And then we'll let the kid talk to you, right? So we'll often do some kind of prep work to make that conversation easier if you do have to have that kind of conversation with your kid, right? So often we'll call the parents being like, hey, they had a really hard time today because this specific thing happened. However, the 3 days leading up to this, they've been having a fantastic time at camp. Here's their favorite activity. Why don't you ask them about this activity on the phone call to try to encourage them to stay for the rest of the week? So we can often work with parents to kind of work through some of that if it does happen at camp as well. The next question we have, I'll pass to Caitlin, is a communication question around, there's emails at camp. How do I contact my camper?
Yeah, so the system that we have set up, our camper mail system, is a specific email address, and we use an email address rather than a lot of camps do, like traditional post. With our location, it can take anywhere between 3 and 6 weeks for things to get to us in the mail. So because of those kind of difficulties, we've decided to use this email system to make sure that if you are sending something for your child to get while they are at camp, they will get it while they are at camp. So the way that the camper mail system will work this summer is we have that email address, and we will have on the middle day of the week, it'll be a different weekday depending on which session your camper is signed up for. But at that midpoint, that is our kind of deadline for camper mail, because at lunchtime on that day, we'll have all of the camper mail printed out and deliver it to campers during the lunch. They will have the opportunity to write out a response to that mail throughout the afternoon, and then later on, we will collect all of those responses and send them back as a reply to that email. So that is how our camper mail system is set up. And of course, if you need to reach camp for any urgent reason, or if your camper needs to reach you for any urgent reason, we have our camp phone set up on site, and that phone number will be in the welcome package that will be sent out, and it's also available on our website.
Okay, our next question, I think I'm going to answer this one. The next question reads, do campers have the opportunity to change into their pajamas before bed? What does the bedtime routine look like? So bedtime routine, we always kind of end our day as a group with what we call Omega, which is kind of a chill, wind down, kind of reflective time at the end of the day. So it's a chance for campers to kind of share. Sometimes it's that rosebud thorns, sometimes it's a favorite memory, but it's that kind of wind down moment to help campers both physically and emotionally kind of wind down from an exciting day at camp. Once they've kind of done that in their cabin groups, each cabin has a chance to go to our washroom building, get changed into sleeping clothes, brush teeth, use the bathroom, whatever they need to do to get ready to go to bed before they head back to their cabins for the night. Once they're back in their cabins at night, depending on the campers, depending on their age, some cabin groups will stay up for a little bit chatting, or if they've brought a book from home they want to read for 15, 20 minutes. Or have conversations as a cabin group. Other cabin groups are tired and just want to go to bed at the end of the day. So it really depends on kind of the energy of that cabin group. But part of our staff training is helping our counselors figure out what that energy is and kind of help everyone get enough sleep so that they're ready for the next day at camp. Just looking in the chat, I don't see any other questions. Let me just double check that I didn't miss any.
I have one.
Go for it.
So often this comes up, especially with, parents of older adolescent kiddos. And the reason that I provide some information around sex and relationships, y'all have mixed gendered cabins, right? What happens? How do you monitor? What do you do? And how do you handle sort of intimate relationships?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when it comes to supervision, counselors do sleep in cabin with the campers. And we also, we make sure that we never have a situation where two campers are completely alone together. Even if they're just quickly both grabbing their sweaters from the cabin, the counselor's hanging out right outside. When it comes to relationships, we have an understanding that for a lot of these campers, this may be the only place that they feel safe to express, their relationships with each other, but we still have guidelines that, like holding hands is okay, but anything that goes a little further than that, we'll step in and remind them that this is a shared space and we are here to be spending time with everyone in our community.
And all of the people around have not given consent for that activity.
Yeah, also on the topic of relationships, one of our programs that we run most weeks at camp is either sex ed or healthy relationships. So we will often bring in guest speakers who will talk to everybody about, hey, what does a healthy relationship look like, both at camp, but also outside of camp? What does that look like? How can you role model that? How can you make decisions that are, healthy both physically and mentally for yourself? And so that's part of kind of our education as well, helping people so that even when they leave camp, they're prepared and kind of know what to expect and how to set themselves up for success.
That's great.
Awesome. I'm not seeing any other questions in the chat. So anybody who's watching live, if you have any questions that you want to ask, or if I accidentally missed one, feel free to put it in the chat.
Is there anything that I touched on that you want to make sure that you emphasize again, or, that maybe I touched on too briefly?
I think for me, the biggest thing is just making sure that we have the information about your kid, right? So even if there's not a spot on the registration form for you to, specifically name, hey, this is a coping strategy or check-in that works really well. If you think that's information that's going to make your child's experience better at camp, let us know, right? We're happy to work with that. We're happy to let the counselor know. But if we don't know about it, then there's not much we can do, right? Both on the positive and negatives, right? If there's things that work really well, or if there's something that is a specific trigger, or there's something that is going to upset your camper, let us know in advance and we will do our best at avoiding that situation at camp, right? So I'm making sure that we have as much information because we don't know your kids as well as you do. So helping set us up for success and helping us to set them up for success at camp.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. So it looks like we've answered everyone's burning questions about camp for the summer. So it looks like, so we'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching live, and anybody who might be watching this later, not live, thank you for watching as well. Thank you so much for joining us, Jennifer. This has been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. You guys are going to have a great summer.